Hello, Kim. Thank you for joining me. Of course, I know who you are, but why don't you go ahead and tell the world who you are
The
so
world,
we can get into it?
the whole world. Yeah, so I'm the broker at the Coldwell Banker Vanguard office here in Fleming Island. I started working for Pete Dalton almost 24 years ago, and kind of had a quick career, ramped up pretty quickly. And over the course of that time, I've sold almost $500 million worth of real estate, which means I've solved lots of problems and made a lot of friends and met a lot of interesting humans and have had a lot of experience in the real estate industry. But other than that, I feel like it's something that's is equally rewarding in a different way to me is the things I do back in the real estate community, whether it's leading our bar camp, which has an amazing team, by the way. So, man, you don't get on the moon by yourself. But we've done 10 bar camps. It's over 11 years. We started with like 150 people at the association. Now we sell out 1,300 people in an hour and can't figure out where to do it now to hold us. I'm currently the secretary of the Northeast Florida Association of Realtors. I'm a speaker and a CRS instructor and lead the women's ministry at my church. So there's that.
How do you have time to do all of that?
I think people ask me that all the time. I think I really like teamwork,
Mm.
and It's not about like I want to be the big cheese and delegate stuff to people. I like people to be able to participate with their gifts and the things that they're good at, and let other people shine. So it allows you like this much broader bandwidth when it's not the you show.
Right, right. That's what you've been telling me in my whole process. There's certain don't try to do everything at once. You need to delegate some things in order for you to be able to be in positions where you can be the most impactful.
Yeah, 100%. And in this industry, especially, it's hard because you feel like everything reflects you. And
Mhm.
it does. But I make mistakes, you make mistakes, we all make mistakes. And so even when we bring other people, on to help us, we have to make room for them to be human too and make mistakes.
I
And
guess
that's how
that's
we
why it's important to have the right people around you.
that's right. That's right.
So I know there's the hot topic floating around in the real estate industry, and I wanted to get your opinion on it. This is the reason why I have you here because I know you have a wealth of knowledge and you can give a lot of people a lot of insight on this. So of course, I know it's floating around. Everybody knows about it. The lawsuit with against and NAR, and I want to talk a little bit about it, go over it because there's some people that may not know. So according to justice.gov, the idea is that NAR has a series of rules, policies, and practices that members have used that may have resulted into lessening competitor competitions among real estate brokers that were a detriment to American buyers. Some of them being disclosing the amount of commission in the buy for the buyer's broker will earn, telling buyers that the buyer broker services are free, not disclosing that uh, buyers brokers will earn on a home that is purchased, and limiting the access to lock boxes to those members who are NAR affiliated in MLS. So I wanted to get your perspective on it because we've talked about it quite a bit within our office. And I want to see what you think and kind of enlighten the world on what this really means.
First of all, if you ever wondered if what's said in the news is true or not, all you have to do is be on the receiving end of something like this, and you're like, "What?" You have
Yeah.
the national news putting out antitrust statements themselves as headlines.
Our
Um,
president saying
our-
that
yeah,
that was on us.
yeah. Everybody can thank the current administration that house prices are going to somehow go down. So you let me know how that works.
Right.
But yeah, so to me, this whole thing is really a money grab.
Mm.
It's unfortunate, and in hindsight, everybody will be able to look back and see that. But these attorneys are going to walk away with 150 million dollars, and the people supposedly who were hurt by this will walk away with 12 bucks. And in the meantime, what's going to happen is there's going to be less transparency, and it's going to make it harder on first-time home buyers, our military home buyers, because they kind of get moved around a lot,
Mhm.
right? Which is very unfortunate that to say they say things like the 6% is going away. Well, first of all, that's not even a thing. There's agents that charge everything from I don't know, $300, I'll stick you in the MLS, 7, 8, 9, 10%, depending on what it is in the land. You know, there's a market for everybody. If you get an attorney, you can get an attorney for $150 an hour or $400 an hour, $800 an hour. You don't have to hire any of them. You can go represent yourself. And it's the same thing in real estate. There is no gate that requires that, like, you can't buy a house unless you go through the realtor gate. That's not a thing either. You can go it alone, and some people do.
So how did this kind of happen? When you look at it, and anybody who reads the listing agreement, it talks about this in there. Like, say a person was to ask for 6%, and they say 3% is for us, and then we give the other 3% to the buyer's brokerage. How did it get to a point where people think that the seller themselves was paying the buyer's agent directly?
Well, can I start that at a different point?
Yeah.
The way it currently works, and I'll speak of the Northeast Florida market. I'm not aware of all the forms in every state and what every single brokerage across the nation is doing, but I would say in Florida, and specifically Northeast Florida, when a seller hires me, then my conversation has been, my fee for this level of service is X. And one of the things I do with my fee is I use a portion of my fee to incentivize the other 12,000 agents in this market, because what's important is that you sell your house and you get the terms and a price that you feel good with. Not so important that I'm the one that does it. I would like to be the one that does it. We call that a birthday in our industry, because they say birth, happens once a year. So they're not as common. So I want to start with that. Secondly, that in our forms, it's transparent to the seller. This is what the fee is, and this is how much we're cooperating with. That wasn't hidden. Thirdly, in our market, we syndicate cooperation to the online portals. So any consumer could have been on Zillow and see exactly what the compensation was going to be to a buyer's agent on that property. Mm-hmm. Now, and where does that data come from? Well, it's syndicated through the MLS. So by an agent putting what the co-op is in the MLS, it is then therefore syndicated to the public. And now the DOJ and this lawsuit have decided it is in the consumer's best interest to not do that anymore.
So now nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Right.
So this idea of transparency is now created, is now made the whole thing opaque. You can't see through it at all. You don't know what's going to happen.
No, and I don't want to be disrespectful to our industry, but this is human nature. I bet if you talk to attorneys, they're like the true Intuit, knowledgeable, full-time, overtime, more time that they've invested in it. And then the other people that are breathing their air, right? They aren't really trying. Right. So hairdressers, I don't care. Everything in real estate, it's the same way. We have people that, maybe aren't doing it full time. They're not, constantly, doing whatever. Maybe they have other jobs. Well, now as an agent, we have to call every single agent to determine if there is any compensation at all. If there is, how much is it? Then we, get that in writing, because now we're required to have a buyer's agreement in place with the buyer prior to showing property. That's going to explain now what the buyer will be paying. And the Wall Street Journal put out a ridiculous example of this. I'm going to use a little hyperbole and go from 1.8 million to 2 million, because it just sounds a little whatever. So $2 million house. And this guy, this seller is going on about how much money he saved not paying a buyer's agent. He had 20 offers. I'm going to promise you right now, he did not have 20 $2 million buyers that were representing themselves.
Right.
How does that play out with the first-time home buyer? Does a first-time home buyer have that income to be able to do that? And and how can they? They can't just right now finance that into their loan.
Right.
Now they could get a contribution. The seller could, pay that cost, pay for the attorney's fees. I mean, the realtor fees. But they can't just say, well, I just want to finance it. It really, really hurts the entry level buyer. And some people have said, well, buyers are like, well, I'm just going to go to the listing agent. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. So you're going to go online, you're going to figure out who the brokerage is, figure out who the agent is, get their number, call them, and set up a showing at a specific time with them on that property that they are then, as far as I know right in this moment, we're required to have a buyer's agreement signed before showing a property.
Right.
So what does that look like for the consumer? You know, for the agents, if I could, I don't want to jump ahead of you, but
No, go ahead. I did want to mention one thing though. Uh, the scenario in which a buyer goes directly to the listing agent, what's different about it now, at least to me, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, what's different about it now versus what it was before this ruling was if you're a buyer that went to a listing agent at that point, yeah, you may be able to work out a deal because one agent is handling both sides of it and the seller is the one that's paying the listing brokerage. Now, the best analogy I can think of, it's me being a baseball player and being in arbitration and then hiring, let's say, hiring the Marlins lawyer to also represent me when dealing with the Marlins. It just does, it seems, it doesn't, I don't know of a person, when you look at the psychology of it, would feel comfortable doing something like that.
Well, I totally hear what you're saying. I also think that the way it's, you know, packaged now, the consumer's thinking lots of things. One, they think everybody charged the same amount. They didn't. Everybody has their own value proposition. You know, you have, when you want to go shopping right now, you can go to Walmart or you can go to Nordstrom's or anywhere in between. Right? There's all different kinds of consumers, all different kinds of goals. So all those options are out there. But for that entry level buyer, that they've got them thinking, okay, not only is, you know, commissions are somehow going way down, which I think is not going to be the case at all. I think
No.
it's going to backfire. But that now in signing a buyer's agreement, these agents have, or consumers, buyers have a mindset like, oh, I'm going to bypass it then and just go to the listing agent. But the listing agent's going to have you sign something. And so now you're assuming the listing agent's working for free for you.
Right. Right.
Or you've decided to go in unrepresented. I mean, I don't think anybody wants that either, especially, you know, first time home buyers. You know, those of us in Geddis, you're one of them, way up there, that care about the people.
Right.
You know, sometimes you've had to say, you know what, maybe you shouldn't be buying right now. Maybe this isn't a good time, or maybe it's not the time to sell. You know, this idea that we're all just a bunch of, you know, whatever sharks, it's totally not true. And the consumer has to take some responsibility for that. You know, how did you pick your agent? Because they were your neighbor's kid who got their license last week? How did you decide who's going to help you buy the house? Like when you go to the furniture store, you know, you walk into the furniture store and you're like, pop, you know, the next salesperson like, oh, they got me. You know, now I'm stuck with this person. You know, is that how you found the person who helped you buy a house? Did you interview anybody? Did you know what you were looking for? I mean, you can find out anything you want on the internet anymore, you know, true or not true, but you can find a lot of information.
Right.
And come up with, what do I need to know as a buyer's agent? And I would say as a listing agent, I know when people have done that homework. Because I can tell they've done it, because they'll ask me questions. Well, do you have 3 references of people you've sold houses to or sold their houses in the last 90 days?
Right.
They didn't make that up. They read, you know, I'm fine with that. That's cool.
Yeah, that makes me happy. You did your work. So yeah,
You
let's
did your
do
work.
it.
Yeah.
Make me
Yeah.
earn my check. I love earning my check. Let's do it.
Yeah. So I just think that there's a misconception out there of what this is actually going to look like. The good news is I think that, you know, we're going to lose. I don't think lose is the right word. That, you know, the number of people in this industry.
Yes, I wanted to talk about this. Yeah. Go, take it on, because that's on my list. So go ahead.
is going to go down because, you know, when people get into real estate, they tend to navigate towards buyers because it is the furniture store thing. You know, they didn't interview anybody. They just grabbed whoever. And with listings, you had to really explain your value proposition. You had to have a marketing plan. You needed to be able to show that you were skilled in not just marketing, overcoming objections and negotiating, that you were going to be able to get that property to closing. You could help them position the house on the market, like all this stuff, right? And with buyers, it's like, oh, let's go, look at houses. But the reality is that's not true. The buyer, there's a lot of information they need. It's just setting expectations and, you know, does this neighborhood have a CDD? Can I afford that? How does that work with my taxes? How does that work with my closing costs when I'm on a limited budget and it has a CDD that's paid in a fiscal year in advance and I'm closing in October and now I'm going to have to pay it all
Mm-hmm.
in advance on the closing, and money's tight. The consumer doesn't even know that,
Right.
and so what? The lender sends them the thing for closing. They're like, I don't have $1,400 extra dollars for this closing. Nobody told me about this. So having a good agent is going to be important. And the agents who are going to stay in this, which is fine with me, are going to, and fine with you, are going to be the ones who can who are going to be providing a higher level of service and can really explain to those buyers the things that are important they need to know before making a decision.
Well, it seems like the agents that do buyers consultations, which is one thing that you talk about with all of us and something that I do. It seems like the agents they're going to have a smoother transition into this because now when you're working with the buyers, it's not as simple as literally plucking them off the tree. Now it's you have to show your value because they may potentially have to be the ones to pay you a portion, if not all, of what your
Mhm.
fee is going to be, which I think that's good. I think it's good because the cream will rise to the top. And
That's
the
right.
people that care the most are the ones that people will actually see. I love the idea of it being more professional, sitting down, having a conversation with somebody, painting it all out, and let them know what it is, and letting them know, hey, look, we're walking into this transaction. You're going to know everything. You're armed with everything, and everything that pops up that you forgot, I have it for you. We're ready to go. So that's one thing. Like I said, you taught everybody, and I think that's probably the difference between who's worried about the change and who's not worried about the change. Obviously you agree with that.
Oh, I totally agree with that. And then you have, some people that aren't clear on the change.
Mm,
There's that
hopefully
bucket
that's me.
too, right?
Right.
So I think in the long run, as far as so this is one thing. In the long run, it's great for us as realtors because it raises that bar there. But in the short run, that doesn't help the consumer and these
Mhm.
expectations. People say, well, whether it was the administration or other newspaper headlines that prices are going to go down. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm sellers out there. I don't know who's listening. You've ever been a seller. I don't think there's a seller that goes, oh, wow, we're not going to be doing that anymore. Let's totally lower the price of the house.
Right. That's not going to happen. I was under the impression that the market dictates the price. That's what I thought.
Right.
But
Right.
it seems to be this idea that it's funny. I actually had this conversation with somebody, and that they said that it was I think it was on social media that we had this discussion. They said it was we're the ones that were driving the prices up during COVID. And I had the conversation. I was like, look, I'm like, if I have somebody that comes to me on a listing that I have, and we've listed as $300,000, and an investor comes in and offers 300, and this has happened, offers 330,000, where I had a family that offered 300, and I bring both of them and say, well, hey, look, this is what the deal is. This is a family. It is less, but this is a family getting here versus an investor, a corporate investor, or whatnot. And I'm 99.998% of the time, they took the higher offer. I don't know how we
It's
control
hard to
that.
give people to give $100 to charity,
Right.
let alone say, I feel so strongly about the future of the neighborhood I no longer live in that I would like to make a $30,000 personal sacrifice for the common good. Like that's not happening.
Right. And the person that made that argument with me was also ended up selling their house, and they took the higher offer from the investor. So I'm like,
Right.
in general, I can get the idea behind it. You don't want to do that, but it's hard to apply generalities to people specifically because
Mhm.
when it comes to people specifically, they do what's in their best interest. So,
100%. And most everyone does, right?
right.
Um, I think the idea that people think that home prices are going to go down, um, there's no evidence that
Mhm.
that is a thing. We have a national housing shortage that is compounding every year.
Mhm.
We have an aging boomer population that we're not going to have places for them and their aging, aging, trying to be places where they can age in place
Mhm.
because there's not enough housing, and you could go down the trail of assisted living. And in the meantime, you have the millennials coming into the market, and they're saying next year is going to be a banner year as they really enter in the largest generation we've ever had. And so they're just now entering into their buying stage.
Right.
So I think it's unrealistic to think that. I know 7% is a lot different, or 6% than free money.
Right.
Money was free. People were buying their fourth house first because money was free. At two and
Right.
a half percent, you were buying like exponentially more than anyone in history was ever able to do. And so I guess I'm just saying that people that are looking at this situation right here with this lawsuit and saying that somehow that relates to more transparency to the consumer, and lower housing prices, they need to show me where that is because I can't see it.
Yeah, I don't see it either. So let's talk a little bit about the agents and what this change what it means for them. There's a lot of people in the industry right now that are worried. There are a bunch of people in the industry right now that are not worried. If I was an agent coming into this, and there's new agents coming into this, how does one look at this and feel confident moving forward? How does this play out, especially when you're up against other agents that have been in the industry much longer?
I think that that people get into this industry without knowing what's behind the curtain.
Hmm.
And meaning they watched a show, they had a closing, whatever, and they get in and they'll start talking to brokerages, and they will, well, what's your split? And my question back would be, well, what do you bring to the table right now? you know so because when you get out of real estate school, the state of Florida doesn't care if you're good at this or if you sell a house or you make a dime. Florida doesn't care. They want to make sure you don't break the law. Everything else is on your own. And so if you in the market, this applied to 20 years ago, 25 years ago, yesterday, and tomorrow. If you're going to get into this industry, you need to have a mindset that you have a lot to learn and you want to learn it right and you want to learn it well. So that's the first thing. What do I need to know? Because when you get out of real estate, you've never seen a contract, you don't understand all the nuances of it, and you could write 10 of them and still not understand all the nuances of it. You need to
Very
have
true.
somebody to talk to, right? Somebody to ask questions to. You don't know what addenda, and when you don't need to practice lawyering and you need to get somebody else to write that language, and whatever you're going to do. Then you're negotiating. You don't know about prospecting. You don't know about personal emotion promotion. You don't know about overcoming objections. You don't know how to get to the why and what a buyer or seller really needs so that you can understand that, so that you can really help them accomplish their goal. I mean, there's just so much to know. And being somewhere, whether you get on a team or it's the brokerage that you belong to, supplies support and training. If you want to do this, you need to always be surrounded by that, because nobody arrives. I've closed so much, I don't even know how many numbers. And people say, you must have seen it all. I'm like, nope. Then you walk in and tell me something, and I'm like, they did what?
Right, exactly. I got one more question before I start asking you a couple of opinions on things. If I'm a buyer that's coming to talk to you, and let's say you're retired, you're relaxed, sitting back, and you're, I don't know, in the Cayman Islands, and somebody walks up to you and says, I'm a new buyer, and they say, I see everything that's going on. Can you give me some advice about what I should do now stepping foot into this new environment? What should I look out for? What do I need to do in order to make sure that I navigate this the right way?
I said, well, first of all, buying a home, it's one of your biggest investments. You want to make sure that you have someone helping you. That first of all, their interest is in helping you, and you want to know that they know what you need. So do do they understand the taxes, HOAs, CDDs, zoning, things that are coming and changing? I mean, there's people that lived in an area around here for a very long time that had no idea that the First Coast Expressway was going to be in their backyard until they started clearing. just over the fence, right?
Mm,
So not that we have to know everything, but when you can be in, when you're invested in real estate, it's because you love it and you want to know stuff. You like knowing real estate stuff, and you use that to help the people that you serve. Um, but as a new buyer, you often don't know those things. So it's what are you going to do to help me navigate through this? Because I don't know any of this. And if your agent's answer is, "Oh, I'll be here for you. I'm here for you," that's a non-answer.
yeah.
The answer is, well, let's talk about those things. Here's some things we need to talk about. We need to talk about showings. What are those going to look like? When we write an offer, let me just give you here are some the 6 main things that we'll need to make decisions about, whether it's your binder, your offer price, your inspection period, any contingencies to make sure that your binder is protected until you're 100% sure that you're ready to move forward. Talk about the importance of a home inspection and appraisal and how they're two different things. Inspection determines condition, appraisal determines value, and they're not the same. You
Hmm.
know, it's someone that takes the time to begin to go through all of those things that you don't have to say. You, as a new buyer, you don't even know all those things. You don't know. But if you're not with somebody who sits down with you and begins to walk you, and quite honestly, it's going to be walking you through more information than you're going to remember. I was doing this at a kind of a role playing thing last week, and I was the agent, and I was talking to, it's like $150 million agent who was being my buyer, by the way. And I said, "You're not going to remember all the things. I'm giving all this to you in writing. You don't need to remember it all right now. What's important is that you have all the stuff that you need to know, and now you know I know it, and that I'm going to be here for you along the way because
Hmm.
this is a lot. I get that." But to have a situation where you go to an open house, you're like, "Oh, I totally get you. And you totally get me. Why don't you help me get a house?" That's not really the way you want to go about it, and never probably should have been the way to go about it. Many of us who've been doing this for, like yourself, for a long time, we're thinking, this is good. We
Right.
want them to interview people. We
Right.
like this.
Right. Make it harder.
Make it
So
harder.
make it harder so we can get our compete. I think the statement you said is that was profound is telling your buyer that now you know I know it.
Mhm.
So don't worry about it. I got you. We're gonna navigate this together. Awesome. So now I got 2 questions to ask. So one, so I made a post yesterday because I had a conversation with my brother about a transaction that he's working on. And we got to talking about millennials and Gen Zers, and these are the demographic that I primarily work with because I'm trying to get these younger people to build some equity so you can make some moves in the future,
Mhm.
and get past the inertia. Um, so the big thing the 2 big things that I've noticed with my demographic and a little bit younger is that one, they want to buy their last home first. I think a lot of it. Well, I'll get your opinion on what you think that reason is, and also there seems to be trepidation on making a decision because when there's 2 options, it removes one, and there's a lot of comfort in having 2 options because with those 2 options, the risk of failure is much lower.
Right. Right.
So I wanted to get your opinion. Why do you think that is? Millennials and older Gen Zers try to buy their last home first, and and what should they really be doing here?
Well, there's a group of people that got away with buying their last house first,
Hmm.
right? Because money was free. It was
Mm,
literally at 2.5%. You could buy a house for less than you could rent something that wasn't as nice as the house that you were buying. So you had a group of people that got away with that. And then you have a group of people who think that their parents' stuff is their stuff.
interesting.
They're like, well, yeah, I mean, I've grown up with these, fancy cabinets and solid surface counters and these, whatever floors and, and it's like, yeah, and your parents have worked for, 30 years, 40 years, whatever that is, to have that stuff. You haven't done anything yet, right? So,
Right.
you can't start where they've landed after everything that they've done. And I think they've been sold a bill of goods on everything, where they're wearing the right shoes, they're members of the right club, they go get their coffee in the right container, all of that. And you don't create wealth being a renter. no family.
Right.
Nobody ever created wealth being a renter. I grew up as a family of renters. There's no wealth in my family. My family of origin. It's starting with my family.
Mm.
And we own multiple properties, right? Came from not homeowners to multiple properties. So I'm going to be able to change that for, my kids. But we started out with a crappy little house in not my favorite place with a really loud road not far away. And if you don't get in the game, you have nothing to trade. If you don't get in the game, you have nothing to trade. So you get in the game, you don't have to love it. You don't have to invite all your friends over. But what you can do is hold on to it for a couple of years and rent it to, I wouldn't rent it to your friend because then you got to kick them out, but someone who's just like your friend,
Right.
they can pay your mortgage for you. And now you trade up and you go get something else.
I'm glad that you said that. I had somebody in one of my posts. They told me, well, I'm a big advocate for millennials and Gen Zers to get townhomes. Big advocate for it. I tell people all the time, my first house was a townhome, and it effectively saved my life, saved my career. Because without it, I wouldn't have been able to make it this far into the industry where I'm starting to actually, I'm getting things rolling now. But this person said, oh, even townhomes are $300,000. And I said, well, not in every area. I was like, especially not in Oakleaf.
Right.
I'm
right,
like,
right, right.
there's properties here, 250, 230. But the problem is that you have to be open to the options, which is what you mentioned. The area, it may be a different area, you may not necessarily want it to be in, but you have to get in the game somehow in order to be able to trade, like you said.
Yeah. So here's the bottom line. The smart folks who are going to be able to see past who they're impressing tonight at dinner,
Mm,
the
mm,
smart folks are going to go, you know what? I'm going to make some moves.
mm.
I'm going to do some of this stuff that's, maybe not perfect, but I'm going to make moves. And 20 years from now, you'll still be living where you're living, not having any wealth in your family, going to work and paying for all your subscriptions. But I'm going to own properties. But it starts somewhere. And if you want to, you have to do things that you don't necessarily want to do all the time so you can do the things that you want to do. I don't love every job I had. I don't love everything that I have to do, but I do what I have to do so I can get to the place where I can do what I want to do.
Powerful, powerful. One last question. I wanted to start there, but I have one last question. I like picking your brain. So, obviously, I think the internet plays a big factor into that. People see these infinity pools and these houses and all this other stuff, and people are like, well, I want that. Even though I think the vast majority of the people on the internet are lying. Like, you don't know if they own those homes. You don't know if they're models. You don't know if that person's just selling that fridge. That fridge that is made of solid gold. You don't know it, but people see these things and they just want it. When you look at the real estate industry itself and realtors that are in it, the internet plays a huge factor in that too. And with the rise of the influencers, there's people have picked certain niches, and any agent knows there's the real estate influencer that is all over the internet and whatnot. How do you think that played a factor into people's thought process with the lawsuit and how people perceive real estate agents?
Oh, I think it played a big factor. And it played a big factor in how the lawsuit went down in Kansas City, Missouri. When you've got, all this stuff and a lot of it not really true. You could be at somebody else's, listing. It's not your house. It's not your listing. It's not your but putting all that out there made it look like it's glamorous. And the reality is those of us who do this day in and day out, we realize that I have agents that'll come interview all these years, come work for me. And so what I always ask them, why are you getting into real estate? And they'll say, well, I just love showing houses. And I'm like, really? Did someone tell you that that's what this is? Because it's not. I'm like, if you're in this just for the money or you like showing houses, you'll never make it because the people will get in the way. That's like being a kindergarten teacher and you don't like kids.
Exactly.
Right? This is a people business, and we primarily do two things, and that is educate people and solve problems. That's what we do. Educate people so they can make the best decision they can based on, what information is available, and then solve problems along the way. Because every time you get in a real estate transaction, you got like 10, 12 people, different people that you're in a relationship with for 30, 40, 60 days, and all their life and all their baggage and the wife they're mad about and the teenager that won't listen and whatever else they have going on, and trying to navigate all those people and funnel them to a closing that's successful. Right.
Mm.
So to think that it's just this glamour thing, and I sold the house in, one day in 3 hours. But the reality is, for those of us, I've sold houses in a day, but that started a year ago.
Right.
Right. When I started working with the seller, okay, what kind of things are we going to do? They're going to minimize, they're going to paint, they're going to do some new carpet. They want to get the most out of it. Okay, we're going to redo this in the yard, whatever. They're working, and the planning. And so a lot happened leading up to that.
There was a reel that I was sent by a friend of mine, because he sends me different real estate influencers. Now, this particular influencer, real estate agents, based on what was in the bio, seemed to be a person that produced. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm watching it, and this person's standing outside. I guess they're in an office, but they're standing outside of a glass door, and she's dancing. And the comment was me trying to convince the Fed to lower rates. And as soon as he sent me that, I would respond back to, I was like, she doesn't have to do this. She doesn't have to do this. Like, she's already produced. She doesn't have to do this. And I'm like, but I mean, if you look over the page, I mean, she looks like she's making money, and I think she is, based on. So it just makes people, the perception of it. I don't think it's a good perception. I don't see lawyers doing that. I don't see doctors doing it. And in this industry, this is people making the biggest decision they've ever made in their life. So doing that, I think it's a huge disservice. I mean, it's not an accurate representation of you. It's not an accurate representation of me. So
No, I don't think the consumer, what industry, what goes on where you have people who go on who are basically like indirectly humble brag about how much they make. Like,
right.
Name anything. So I really think that for a lot of us, we've, not been, personally tolerant. We might not have been, vocal about it, but, the eye roll, like, oh, good grief. I think the consumer, hopefully, that there'll be less of that. If anything, what they've done, whether they've given a negative impression of what we do, is they've persuaded probably a lot of people to get into real estate that didn't know how hard it was, and how much work it was, and how much heart it requires to do. And so 80%, I think we're up to like 87% now, they said. I just heard that last week. 87% don't make it.
Ooh.
You got to have some hustle muscle. Nobody makes you show up. Nobody's going to make you care. We're independent contractors. Nobody's making you go learn. Nobody's making you anything. You have to have that internal desire that you compete with yourself, that you want to do right. You want to create customers for life so that they have this great experience that you're going to be seeing them again in 5, 6, 7 years, whatever that time is. And you're doing it because that's who you are.
Yep. And I liked when you said fixing problems. I think that's probably my favorite part of it. My brother calls me the wolf, because every time a problem comes up, I come stomping. How are we going to solve this? How are we going to figure this out? So yeah, I think that's actually the fun part about this industry.
Well, I know you like sports, and so for me, when I always like to say that when I solve that problem, that's like my nothing but net thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
that's the walk-off shot. You just put your hands up. I know I'm good. I'm good. I know.
It feels good though. It feels good,
especially when the person you're dealing with comes up to you and says, I appreciate what you did. I appreciate that. I'm like, you know what? That's what I'm here for. The money is cool, but like, you could be shiesty and make the money, or you can do the right thing. And
winning for people feels great.
Right. Right.
You know, you had asked me something earlier, or you had gone down a road earlier, and I just want to make sure you get, because we kind of went off onto a different topic, but
Mhm.
about sellers, and our sellers going to say, well, then I don't have to do that anymore. I don't need to
Right,
go up
right.
anymore,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
What's their perception now? Even though
Yeah.
they didn't pay the buyer's agent when they bought, but
Right. Well, that's a hold
human,
up, right? But here's the
human.
thing, no, they don't have to. You don't have to shower. You don't have to change the oil in your car. Like, you don't have to do most anything really,
Yeah.
maybe eat and drink water, but then you say, well, what's in my best interest? And if I'm going to sell a truck and I put it in my front yard that 9 people live on my street with a sign, okay? Or I could put it in Auto Trader and have it online, and where every buyer who's looking for the truck that I have knows it's for sale, right?
Mm,
And so it's kind of the same thing. If the goal is to get maximum value out of it, then you want maximum exposure. You want the maximum number of consumers in the market who are looking to buy, to have access to the property. And then when I say access, meaning the ability to be able to buy it, because for a lot of these consumers, they don't have the ability to buy without that being in the price. And being in the price means if the seller is cooperating, then they're going to finance it in their mortgage,
right.
right? Anyway, so certainly no, and those can be varying degrees of what they offer, right? I mean, it's always been negotiable. That's never not been a thing. So it really bugs me that's been
That's
put
a
out there,
narrative.
right? But the sellers will have to decide. But in my experience, the most people who have the ability to buy what I'm selling, I'm gonna make more. I'm gonna have better terms, better price. So I mean, that's kind of my thoughts on
If there's no buyers, then there's no sellers,
it.
and and nobody gets to move on to the next stage of their life. So yeah, I don't
I
really
think there's
know.
a lot of consumers going like, "Why is this happening?
Yeah,
Why are you guys making it so hard?" And I'm like, "We didn't,
yeah. Lawyers want to get paid.
which is funny because, with lawyers, you can represent yourself. You can get a cheap lawyer, you get an expensive lawyer. But the difference between lawyers and realtors, unless you're an ambulance chaser,
Mhm.
because if you're an ambulance chaser, you're not getting paid until you're getting paid from insurance. So they're
Like a
determining
buyer's agent, kind of.
they're determining what kind of insurance is available, right,
Mhm,
before they will pursue the lawsuit.
mhm.
But attorneys, other than that, which this would fall for buyers agents and sellers, attorneys get paid as long as they're not done and you haven't won yet.
Yeah.
Real estate agents do not get paid until they have 100% delivered.
Yep.
And that's where I have a problem with the law firm and the attorneys that are involved in this. I'm like, wow, you all have whatever, I won't say it, but so
Yeah.
to be able to make that at us, and y'all get paid no matter what. Now, what was interesting, I guess, with this lawsuit, because it turned into a class action
Mhm.
in their lawsuit, that they were explaining the reasons why they should get paid, what they should get paid. And they said they went into this with no guarantee that they were going to be paid. And I said, welcome to my world, baby.
Mm.
Every time we list a house, if it's not successful, if we could do the whole thing and have, it was sad, but a buyer walks away the day of closing. Not my fault that they flaked. I'm not getting paid. Starting over. So anyway, that's my soapbox.
That's a great way to end it. That was a great way to end it. Just drop the mic, walk off the stage, done. Well, I appreciate you, Kim, talking with me. This was fun, and I think it'll be a light enlightening to a lot of people, because there's just a bunch of smoke mirrors listening to the State of the Union address, and I'm like, oh no, this is not it, my guy. It's it's good to be able to discuss it and be like, this is exactly what's going on. So that way people can kind of understand. The people that are paying attention, they're paying attention. And the people that are not, they're not. We talked about it. We're like, this is going to fade away. I mean, nobody's talking about Diddy anymore. Nobody's talking. We're literally, it's 1 week after next week. There's always something else that comes up. So, but maybe now with some of the smoke gone, a little bit gone, maybe now the information can start coming out and people can really start understand truly what it is and how it's going to affect agents, going to affect buyers, brokerages, all that kind of stuff. So I appreciate you.
Well, I know a lot of amazing agents all over this country who dedicate their careers to being the best they can be and helping people. You're definitely one of them. And so, um, interview, ask questions, and make sure you're in good hands.
There you have it. Kim Knapp, everybody. Thank, thank you, Kim. I appreciate you.